Hi, and welcome to Tech Takeaways, the podcast taking technology's largest challenges and chopping them down into little bite-sized little chunks for you to really enjoy and savour. I'm your host, Jason Fitzgerald, and I'm joined as ever by Paul Stringfellow.
Hi.
And Wayne Miller.
Hi.
So this week's episode, we're talking about Microsoft Envision, so the London conference which happened recently, all centered around Microsoft emerging technologies, putting some focus on artificial intelligence and some technologies that we expect to see from Microsoft over the next year or so. So Paul, believe that you went and had a great time.
Well, it did.
Yeah.
I mean, it'd be a short episode if I didn't go, to be fair.
Yeah.
So that was important. So I did. Yeah, it was in London, one of those kind of trolley yourself across London to the XL, and then join a really long queue, which was fascinating. We're assuming that AI was not involved in queue planning when we first got there. Although as was pointed out, maybe AI was involved in queue planning and just didn't work very well, but not quite sure. But yeah, it was a really interesting event. The real focus was around, of course, because is it even a real tech event if the focus isn't AI these days? But it was specific around what Microsoft are doing in what they're terming as a product Copilot.
Yeah.
We'll dig in a little bit into what that is because, Wayne, I know you have a burning question.
What is Copilot?
Yeah. And that's a good burning question.
And you've waited to now to tell me.
Because you've been asking me for about 2 weeks, and I said, just wait till we do a podcast about it. So Copilot is probably a phrase that lots of people have heard, and Microsoft have been so Microsoft have had Copilot in beta and early kind of preview for a little while. So there'll be people watching this who've seen Copilot. Basically, Copilot is Microsoft introducing generative AI type technologies, but not just Gen AI actually, but AI technologies across the Microsoft stack. So there's certain areas where people are seeing it already, and then there's some areas such as Copilot for Security, which will be available in public preview from November the 1st onwards. So you're seeing this kind of being drip fed, but it's basically taking, we've done episodes on generative AI, we've talked about ChatGPT and the like, but it's basically bringing that kind of stuff into the enterprise, embedded throughout Microsoft 365. And I think actually the important piece for me when I kind of went to this, it was really interesting. It was a really interesting day. It was a brilliant keynote in the morning that almost got me to the point thinking maybe I just go home now and start playing with Copilot as opposed to spending the rest of the day here, which is I'm not sure quite what the idea that Microsoft were going for. I think the point was they wanted us to stay. So I did. But yeah, it was kind of how you can use Copilot day to day, built into your organization, and some of the protections around it as well. And I do think the important part is making this something that is just baked into your day-to-day activity. It's not something that you're going to go and use somewhere else, but actually it's just there almost as that intelligence assistant, just helping you to do things better.
So where are people going to see this? How, as a user, am I going to know that I'm using Copilot? I mean, are we talking Clippy?
Posh Clippy. Yeah, Posh Clippy. I think.
What's Clippy?
Do
we need to?
Do you remember Microsoft's little paperclip that used to?
Yeah. We're going back now.
Don't claim you're too young for Clippy. You know exactly what Clippy is. Well, I think So that's a good question. Yeah. So where are you going to see Copilot? And Copilot is going to be baked. So there's different versions of Copilot, and it's kind of going to be baked in. So you're going to see Copilot inside of Microsoft 365, but you're also going to see a sales Copilot, which is going to sit there alongside using information from things like CRM and taking that and allowing you to do natural language queries across multiple repositories. So you're going to see it there. I touched on the introduction in Security Copilot, which is going into public preview in November. So probably by the time you see this show, it'll already be out there for those who are signed up. And so Security Copilot is going to sit across Microsoft security tools and third-party tools to apply intelligence and almost apply experience. And the example that Microsoft gave actually throughout it, and I think this is kind of where AI in the enterprise is going to start to play its part, was the ability to allow people to, their example was kind of a junior analyst looking at things inside of Microsoft Sentinel, so their SIEM product, but rather than having to rely on an experienced analyst to be able to interpret what they're seeing, is to use Security Copilot to do that piece of work for them. So, it's been kind of the intelligence has already been built into Copilot of the experienced analyst, but you're going to be able to give a junior analyst that capability and say, with the junior analyst skill alongside what Security Copilot will bring, it's going to allow them to do that more. But you're just going to kind of see this thing baked in with some really useful additions.
Yeah, that's really cool. I think, enabling a more junior engineer to leverage that technology, that's a game changer, isn't it? I think people are concerned, is AI going to steal our jobs? So I think it's a tool, isn't it? It's having a lot of things automated and adding that insight is quite powerful.
Well, we're seeing a resource challenge across the industry, aren't we? So if this helps with that, it can only be a good thing.
Yeah.
And I think that was a big part of it, because obviously there's a lot of scene setting, and I think what was interesting was that Microsoft shared, actually on your point, Microsoft shared some research around how companies were looking at the use of AI, and the vast majority of people that Microsoft had spoken to, there's always caveats for this kind of thing, but the vast majority of people were looking at how AI was going to allow them to be more productive as an organization, to allow their people to be more productive. It wasn't about replacing people. It was about almost doing the heavy lifting of kind of the day-to-day stuff, like something like security, rather than ploughing through reams and reams of information in Sentinel or something else, actually having artificial, and you already do see this in this space, a lot of the leading vendors are already taking that kind of analytics and AI approach to try and work through that. But I think interestingly, it was some of the other places that Microsoft were looking to add this, so within Microsoft 365, so things like, there was a great example, one of a speaker got on stage and talked about a meeting that they were having. A couple of people had come into this meeting, and basically at the start of the meeting went, here's the 18-page report that we want to talk about. Bearing in mind, they never sent him the 18-page before. He said, so we can spend our 30 minutes in one of two ways. Either we can sit here quietly while I go through this 18-page report, or we can stick that in Copilot, see what it comes out with, and we can do two things with that. One is we can talk about the key points, but we can also discuss whether the key points that Copilot found were the key points you want to take from the report. And I thought that was a really interesting idea. So basically, whacked it in Copilot, that came out, 30 seconds later with, here's a summary point, and then they could talk about, is this the message we want from this piece of work that we're doing? And there's a couple of other things. I think things that somebody in your position, Wayne, would absolutely love. So the ability to have Copilot running alongside a Teams meeting, and at the end of that Teams meeting, summarising the meeting and coming up with action points out of the meeting for you. And I mean, there's a couple of interesting examples where people were talking about the risk that they run is that they sit inside the meeting and then just don't listen, and then just wait for Copilot to tell them the answer at the end. So I think there's things that you probably need to be wary of. So that was an interesting use, and I suppose from kind of with my geeky data head on, one of the things that really caught my attention was a thing that Microsoft talked about. We did an episode previously where you talked about your trip to NetApp Insight. We touched on this kind of NetApp data fabric. What was the introduction of what Microsoft called the Microsoft Fabric? But what that basically allows you to do is, rather than is to create kind of a data lake, but actually rather than you having to pull lots of data into this data lake, so it's, can be quite a big manual process, was allowing you just to integrate with multiple data repositories and then use the Microsoft Fabric over the top to pull from all of these repositories to just give you that consolidated, aggregated data set that you could then interrogate, whether it was natural language or whether it was building things like chatbots or building workflows, but being able to do all of that without moving the data first. And I thought it was a really interesting, really interesting capability, because I think, as we talked about in a previous episode when we talked about what NetApp were doing, that we had that data has weight. Moving data around can be quite a difficult thing to do, so actually having that level of consistency over the top can be really powerful. So, but all of this was relatively high level. The event was very much an introduction into this stuff.
When do you see us, fully using Copilot? You said 1st of November for security perspective.
Yeah, so Microsoft, so Copilot already in public preview and quite a lot of this stuff, but Copilot as generally available will be probably generally available as people are watching the show. It was, so from November, things like Sales Copilot, Microsoft 365 Copilot will already be generally available.
So this is another bolt-on license to your already 365 E3s, E5s, etc., etc.
Do you know what? I think the only, always cards on the table, I think, with this kind of stuff, because the one thing, if there was a negative from the event, was Microsoft's approach to how you can get to consume Copilot. So Copilot, you're absolutely right, will be a license bolt-on to your existing Microsoft 365 license. And you've got to either have, I think it's any of the 365 business editions, so for smaller customers, so as long as you're running standard or
premium or essentials.
Yeah, I think as long as you're running one of them.
Yeah.
And then it was for people with Microsoft 365 E3s and above.
Yeah.
But the bolt-on, it's $30 per user per month for Copilot.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, and that's a...
Does everyone need that, or you can switch it on?
Yeah, well, I think the reality is everybody won't have it. So while everybody might need it, everybody won't. And I think if you look at what, and I think this is quite an interesting part of the conversation. I think if you look at what Copilot does, actually not everybody will need it, but the people who are doing content creation, the people who are making decisions, and this is what AI is potentially about in the enterprise. It's there for better decision making. It's there to do a bit of heavy lifting when it comes to content creation. It's there for pulling information together, like with things like Microsoft Fabric. It's there for doing the hard work, not necessarily the hard work in security. I was speaking, while I was there, actually, I was speaking to a lady from one of the Microsoft partner vendors. It doesn't really matter which vendor it was. And we were talking there about how Security Copilot was going to work with stuff that they did. And they were saying, no, it's that kind of, actually anything that can do some of that heavy lifting from a user perspective. But it's important that we don't lose sight that security operations people still need to know security. We can't just be going, AI is dealing with this problem for you. So I think it was my only negative from the event was that feels quite a heavy investment.
That's a high price point, I think.
But to your point,
but then again, it depends how efficient that tool makes you, doesn't it? If you've got some junior engineers and they're doing the job of a senior engineer because of it, there's value in it. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, there's a couple of really interesting case studies that people did about their use of their stuff that they'd already been doing with Microsoft. So these events are like, bring a customer on to talk about how great all this stuff is. But there were a couple of interesting. I won't say the customers were, in case I'm not supposed to be sharing it publicly. But there was a couple of interesting examples of the things that they'd done, which I thought was in their kind of AI journey. You can tell I've been to a Microsoft event. Everybody's on a journey, aren't they? But the AI journey that they were on, and the things that they talked about was two things really stood out for me. One was to fully understand where the benefit is. What is it that you're trying to achieve by investing in AI? And then this maybe comes back to that piece about, can you justify the $30 a month add-on license to all the users who are going to use Copilot? So I thought that was interesting, and know what you're trying to get out of this. Don't just throw it in and go, let's see what it tells us, because actually that's probably not the reality. You can't just go, AI, tell me stuff that I don't know. It's about, how do I do this stuff better? So I thought that was quite interesting. And then the other thing that they talked about, is kind of going back to kind of security. I thought one of the other things they talked about that was really interesting was the best decision that they'd made was that they got their security teams involved right at the start. So before they started rolling any AI into the organisation, security and governance were involved day one, and said that was absolutely the best decision that they made, because it meant that they weren't having a security conversation later. And I think, while talking about kind of Microsoft and their $30 per user per month being a high price point, one of the things they did talk about I didn't realise was a thing for Microsoft 365 subscribers. So I don't know if any of you have ever used Bing Chat. So this is basically Microsoft search engine, but it's a GPT-4 back end. So you can go in and have natural language queries. So I've started using Bing Chat quite a lot. But for 365 subscribers, they've actually got a thing called Bing Chat Enterprise. So you can just turn that on so that your users, so basically you have to use Microsoft Edge as your browser. You can do it with a Chrome plugin, but use Microsoft Edge as your browser. Make sure the Edge instance that you're running is logged into your 365 account. And that allows you to use Bing Enterprise. So basically the same engine, it's GPT-4 running in the background. But what it does allow you to do is that when you have used the enterprise Bing Chat engine, is that it doesn't take any of your data to then go and educate the Microsoft model. So it doesn't touch any of the information that you're putting in, so it maintains privacy. So if you're using intellectual property, PII type information, you can use that safely within Bing Chat Enterprise, knowing that Microsoft have said,
that's a good feature, actually, isn't it? Because recently there was some issues around ChatGPT that was leaking other people's questions to other users, and some of it contained quite sensitive information.
And the nice thing about that is Bing Chat Enterprise is free. So you don't need a Copilot license to run that. It's just Microsoft 365 user, tie Edge into your 365 logon and use. So there's a takeaway. You want to use a bit of free stuff from Microsoft, then use that. But yeah, it was a fascinating event. And Copilot's going to be a game changer for lots of organizations. But I think actually that caveat about, one, the price, but two, know why you want to use it, I think will be, that will allow people to derive some value from it pretty quickly.
Yeah, great. Okay. So AI is on the horizon, on its way.
And I think that piece about baking it into everything that you do.
Yeah.
That idea of using it for things like summarizing big documents, coming up with things that you can do from meetings.
Summarizing Teams meetings is. I'd buy it just for that. $30 a month. It'd save me hours.
Yeah. Well, the ability, and maybe this is something we'll all try before next time we record some shows. But doing something like that and then go into it and saying, that meeting we've just had, can you summarize that but put it in a PowerPoint for me? And it just coming up and doing a PowerPoint going, based on what we've had, there's a PowerPoint, key points, some pictures, away you go. Everybody will love PowerPoint after that.
Again.
There's your key takeaway.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, look, we hope that you've enjoyed this episode on Microsoft Copilot. It's in public preview at the moment, so if you want to get your hands on, go search for it. I was going to say Google for it, but maybe Bing.
Ask Bing Chat, yeah.
Use Bing Chat. Go track it down. Play with it. You might find some interesting use cases with it. We're available everywhere you get your podcasts. So if you're not already subscribed, hit subscribe. If you're watching us on YouTube, there's a little subscribe button just below. Just give that a little click. So see you next time.
Thank you.